Also the concluding session of our Food Forward 2025 webinar series. I really thank you all for joining us today. And we all understand that food loss and food waste are critical issues for India to address, but they are often misunderstood. They're tough to measure and trickier to solve because there are multiple hotspots, numerous causes, and a diversity of actors who are involved across the food supply chain. It really requires all of us to come together. So this Food Forward series is actually a step taken in this direction by the Friends of Champions 12.3 India network this year. So engaging with and learning with 30 experts and more than 450 people through all the sessions. What this series has really told us is that the challenge is, of course, multidimensional, but so are the solutions. So these sessions truly stood out as a chance to come together, learn from each other, and shape solutions collaboratively. Through such collaborations and consistent support from the partners, we at WRI India have been able to shepherd our commitment on the issue in multiple ways. And just like to name a few things that we've been able to achieve or succeed with over last few months is that city level strategies and partnerships in Indore and Pune, be it commodity specific research that gave us the working paper on tomatoes losses last year, training modules for farmers developed with DOGR, ICAR, or be it campaigns like Waste Nahi Rahe. Some of the recent efforts that we've been able to pull off together have also focused on creating open access resources, such as the awareness toolkits for the HoReCa sector and a compendium of best practices. These resources have actually, an effort to also enable our partners and more organizations and more people to act on the issue together. So the Food Forward series has really attempted to explore multiple dimensions of this challenge. And now turning to our last session in the series, we would like to turn to the critical question of how India's policies and institutions can create the right ecosystem to reduce food loss and food waste at scale. So diving straight into our today's session on policy pathways to reduce food loss and waste in India, I would like to now invite Dr. Anar Bhatt, who would take this session forward with an excellent panel of experts. Over to you, Anar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shweta. And I join Shweta in welcoming all of you, all our participants to these webinar series, especially to this concluding session. It has been nothing short of a very exciting and enriching journey through these, series of webinar. So, and it also gives me it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our expert panelists today. And we do have an excellent lineup. And let me begin with introducing Dr. Meeta Punjabi Mehta. She's a senior food systems officer at FAO's regional office at Asia and the Pacific, where she leads work on food loss and waste. She brings extensive global and regional experience in sustainable agri-food systems transformation with over 80 publications to her credit. We have Andrew Goodland. He's the World Bank's lead agriculture specialist for India, based in Delhi since Jan 2022. He provides technical and operational leadership for bank's investment and analytical portfolio on agri-food systems transformation. And he has had over 23-year career at the World Bank, including extensive experience across Asia and Africa. Welcome, Meeta and Andrew. We have Dr. Amol Yadav. He's a Group A government officer with over a decade of experience with Maharashtra's Department of Cooperation, Marketing and Textile. So he currently serves as the additional project director of Asian Development Bank's assisted magnet project, Maharashtra Agri-Business Network, where he leads efforts to transform agri-value chains and farmer livelihoods. So we're really looking forward to, learning more from Dr. Yadav, especially the ground experiences of bringing about change in value system. And we are also joined with Dr. Ruchika Singh. She's the executive program director for Food, Land and Water at WRI India with over 2 decades of experience in environmental and development issues. She leads WRI India's work on sustainable food and land use systems, focusing on landscape restoration, food loss and waste, and sustainable agriculture. welcome Ruchika and Amol. We're really looking forward to our discussion today. And let's let's dive right in in our discussion, and let's start with Meeta. So Meeta, if you could share with us, based on your cross country experience, which policy approach, according to your observation and experience, has most consistently reduced food loss and waste, and which sort of design principle at its core can make it sustain?
Thank
Meeta,
you
if you
very
could.
much. Yeah, thank you for that question, and thank you for this opportunity to be here this afternoon. So, actually, if we see globally, some of the countries in the region are actually leading the work on food loss and waste. For example, South Korea is a global leader, and the country recycles 95% of its food waste. And they also have this, pay as you throw policy, whereby the more you throw away the waste, the more you are charged for it. In the case of Japan, they have a food loss act where they have specific numbers on food loss and waste reduction. They have goals and targets which they are implementing. France has a policy called the Garrett policy, which stops any supermarket from throwing away food that is edible, and the food has to be distributed and somehow get back into the consumption cycle, whether it is for feed or for fodder, given the kind of food. So these are like basic key successes. Overall, beyond legislation, to make a policy successful, we need a full ecosystem of activities and actions. Very important amongst them is the public awareness on reducing food loss and waste through awareness campaigns, through education materials. The education starts at school itself, so we get people to be aware of the issue of food loss and waste. Next is to also support innovations, technological innovations in how do we, what do we do with the food that we are rescuing, and how it can be upcycled or recycled. Also, very critical, and what many countries are doing now is having the whole, developing the ecosystem of the circular economy, because, we have to salvage the waste and then see the best practices and uses for it. And then, so you're creating an ecosystem of economic earnings as well. So it's a financially sustainable circular model, which is important not only from the financial perspective, but it is also critically important for sustainable food systems. So, in a nutshell, developing policies and strategies, and then having a full ecosystem around it for implementing these policies to have a concentrated impact on reducing food loss and waste. Over.
Thank you so much, Meeta, for sharing those insights, and especially examples from the different countries that have worked. And truly, as you noted, many countries are now working towards developing an ecosystem for circular economic models. And and when you're talking about food loss and waste, what could be those enabling aspects of that conducive ecosystem? But when we're talking about specific, interventions or project or to thrive and to become successful, let me move to Andrew here, and maybe like ask him to share a few insights on what are those specific enabling conditions that must be in place before we consider a food loss and waste project, which is ready to, which is bankable and ready to scale. So what are those enabling conditions that should be in place when we're talking about, food loss and waste interventions?
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for inviting me. Before I answer that, and I'll come to it, I just want to frame the question a little bit and frame the issue a little bit. I mean, in my view, food loss and waste is it's an outcome. It's not the issues are behind it. I mean, the outcome is that you get increased of food loss and waste. And therefore, when you are designing policy to address food loss and waste, you're trying to design policy to address some of the underlying factors which are leading to food loss and waste. And I think we need to know why, what's really driving this. And of course, there's different causes of it. It could be inadequate infrastructure, storage. It could be inadequate processing of food. It can be production gluts where farmers are just producing too much. It can be other inefficiencies within value chains which are leading to food loss and waste. I think we also need to break down. I mean, it's a big topic, and it's great that Dr. Mita is here because she's really an expert on this, and I'm not. But when you think about food loss and waste, there's different categories. I mean, firstly, you get a food which is not considered to have any value. So this may be a byproduct of something which is produced. Or as Amita was talking about, I think in France, you get a produce which is not considered to have value because maybe it has some physical imperfections or something. So this goes into the loss. So you get this category of stuff which has no perceived value, so it gets wasted. Then you have a produce which has a value, but for whatever inefficiencies like the one I mentioned before, it gets wasted. It doesn't get to consumers. So when we're thinking about how we approach this, I mean, I think we have to think a food systems approach. We need to think about where there is a legitimate role for public policy to address this, and Mita talked about regulation, which you can have to require households to recycle, greater awareness of recycling. But let me maybe think a little bit more about the private sector, because I mean, what I see, and we've just come out of World Food India, where we organized a session there. There's a lot of focus on food loss and waste. What's clear is that there's tons of entrepreneurial private sector activity, technologies out there which can help to turn either increase the efficiency of value chains or turn a commodity of no value into one which does have value. But what is often faced is how do you actually create the ecosystem for scaling innovation? And here, of course, we then look at the incentives for scaling. We had someone from NABARD talking to the audience last week about whether you can put in public subsidy to enable increased access to finance, so entrepreneurs can scale. Of course, there's a whole innovation ecosystem as well about how you can stimulate innovation to be taken to scale. There's also significant information gaps, and I think public policy, people struggle a little bit. I mean, it's great that food loss and waste is getting more attention these days, but still there's somewhat of a knowledge gap around the causes, the severity, and the opportunities to reduce it. And we don't even know what's a good number in terms of percentage of food loss and waste. I mean, we hear numbers banded around, people saying there's 30-40% food loss and waste, right? That sounds horrendous. For cereals, it's, I don't know, 5, 7, 8%. That's considered undesirable. But what is a desirable level? I mean, how much public money should we be putting into reducing food loss and waste? Okay, I have my one minute warning. So I think we need to give it deeper thought about what are the causes, what do we want to get out of this? What is the policy? Sorry, what's our vision for reducing food loss and waste? And then design policy both on the regulatory side to encourage households and other people within food systems to reduce, but also to see how we can stimulate private sector activity to scale solutions to reduce food loss and waste? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing those insights. And indeed, I completely agree with some of the points you made about understanding what is the actual quantum of food loss and waste, what is the magnitude, understanding what causes it, and just sort of setting that policy vision to reduce it in a targeted way. I found that point very interesting, and that connects me to inviting Amol, especially your point on building infrastructure, post-harvest infrastructure, and what is the role of multiple actors, especially private sector actors, and how can we incentivize to create that infrastructure on ground. So, Dr. Yadav, if I invite you to talk about your work in Maharashtra, and especially if you could share what are the main challenges in setting up post-harvest infrastructure for small farmers, and how do you think finance and policy can help?
Okay, thank you, Anna. Actually, the Magnet project, as such, through Magnet project, Asian Development Bank and the government of Maharashtra is trying to build value chain infrastructure in the perishables, particularly 15 selected commodities. And project is on since last 4 years. Uh, Initially, the project, as we thought, the main emphasis was to build infrastructure for the small and marginal farmers through their collectives, and also to have infrastructure in a public domain through our states or the agriculture marketing boards infrastructure. But our learnings in last 3-4 years is that the challenges that small farmers particularly faced, particularly in case of FPOs, because in case of the value chain players or the private players, creating infrastructure was rather easy. But in case of FPOs, they face several challenges. The first challenge was, of course, related to their own equity, generating their own equity. Once they submitted the project or the project got approved, and they realized that they may not able to raise the equity from their shareholders, and they faced a lot of financial constraint, and that work get delayed. Then they try to modify the project. And then second was another was their lack of knowledge and access to the technology. So that was the another challenge that they faced. And a third thing was, even though few of them they created good we can say the kind of bigger infrastructure, or some they created infrastructure that matches their requirements and as well as their financial capability, but they find it very difficult to have market access issues, so that their infrastructure got underutilized. And again, the management issues were also pop up. So the main what we can say, the challenges of setting of post harvest infrastructure is first is a lack of technical know-how. Second is what we can say, the financial constraints, particularly in the form of uh, we can say the linkages with the financial institutions, because not they only they not only need financial linkages for the creation of infrastructure, but again for the maintenance or ongoing operations they need a working capital. So these are few of the challenges that they face. So based on their learnings, we also inculcated few of the things, like we promoted the handholding, we provided them the access to the technologies, then we provided them working capital in the form of our financial intermediation loan, of course through the financial institutions, because directly lending farmers was out of our mandate. So we lend to financial institutions, and they made onward lending to these farmers collectives. So these were the few of the challenges that we faced here.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Amol. And I think those are very valid points, especially the ground level challenges. When we are providing, when infrastructure support is provided, and how do you utilize it and ensure that there are consistent market linkages, and at the same time the working capital support, so that we ensure that this scales. And And very interesting point on, ensuring that there is integration and collaboration at different scales. And that brings me to Ruchika, where, if she could, based on your work, Ruchika, at WRI India, if you could, share how collaborative action can inform national and state level policies or even city level action around food loss and waste, and translate some of this into actionable initiatives at various scales like national, state, city, and also at the community level. If you could share based on our work on WRI India some of these insights, that would be great. Ruchika.
Thanks, Anar. I'd like to actually build on the points that the previous speakers made. There is a need for creating that larger enabling ecosystem, and I think that all the three speakers kind of talked about that, right? I mean, when we are talking about informing national or state policies, we're really also thinking about food loss and waste. At least when we're thinking about solving for the problem, there are several challenges and drivers, and Andrew kind of laid that out quite well in terms of a lot of these are structural issues. We need to think about technology, managerial issues, and behavioral issues as well. And how do we do that together? And, this would really require, having a multi-stakeholder action coalition, which can sort of, which is also echoing or taking forward, what the key issues in the sector are. And when we started our work on food loss and waste in India, we started with actually looking at what the state of the art for in terms of the issues on food loss and waste is. And one of the things that came out, which we also highlighted in the paper from the title itself, there are much more sort of unknowns rather than knowns when it comes to the topic of food loss and waste in India. And there is a need for a multi-stakeholder action coalition that could really collaborate, foster collaboration, partnerships, a common sort of a research agenda to mobilize action. And how do we sort of, support policy and its implementation? And that's what we started with, in terms of when we started some of our work here in India. And taking a leaf from the Champions 12.3 sort of network globally, which WRI and the Ministry of Agriculture with the Netherlands government sort of is the co-secretariat, our focus was really to run a Friends of Champions network, which is, like the global sort of Champions network. It's a new multi-stakeholder loose network, which brings together like-minded organizations, companies, to really see how we sort of can think through on the agenda of food loss and waste. What are the critical issues that we need to do? And what did we really do on the policy side here? So one of the things that we leveraged was, when India had the G20 presidency, a lot of questions that sort of were coming up was, while food and agriculture was top on the agenda, one question that, was coming up was, are we also talking about food loss and waste and the different strategies of this in a systematic way? So we sort of worked with some of our friends, as partners to come up with a T20 policy brief, which talked about, what are the recommendations for the G20 country members states can take to enable action for reducing food loss and waste through a target measure act approach. Essentially, we talked about three sort of recommendations, and I heard a bit of it also, what Meeta was talking about, and, so quite resonates what she said earlier. One was in terms of the G20 countries, there's a need for setting explicit targets. How do we, it could be NDCs, but it could be, countries taking their own sort of different targets, right? I mean, we already have SDG 12.3, but then how do we sort of measure? Or on sort of, reducing the volume of food that is going to the landfill, how do we think about some of those issues? So, specifically target setting becomes critical. The second sort of recommendation is around, that we had was how the G20 states could also enable measurement of food loss and waste through public-private partnerships to really understand the scale of food loss and waste in the target geography. And I think that's something which in India also we have a lot to learn from. Globally, there's been, quite a lot of rich examples where, some of these public-private partnerships have worked well, like the Coatland Commitment in the UK, the Australia Food Pact, etc. And how we sort of learn from some of it and what's that loose network. And I think the Friends of Champions is one way that we started sort of looking at it. And the third was around, while you have the target and the measure, what's the act part of it? How do you inspire sort of states to think through in terms of targeted incentives, policies, investments that may be needed for research, capacity building, and taking forward some of this. A lot of it is about creating awareness building, momentum building, trainings, capacity building, and how do we do that. So that's one example where the Friends of Champions Network came together and some of the partners to give policy recommendations to and during the G20. Another sort of example is we work with the Netherlands Embassy and Center for Responsible Business to do a landscaping study to understand for the food waste sector in the Horeca segment in Pune and Mumbai, what are the key issues and challenges that we need to think through, and what are the sort of key solutions that could one can look at. So these are two examples in terms of when we think about collaborative action, which we've been sort of deploying. We've been also focusing a lot, and you asked about a lot of this is national level, right, and or city specific, depending on what were the key sort of stakeholders as a network we were trying to sort of work with. In Pune and Indore, these are two cities that WRI India is currently working a bit more closely in reducing, sort of co-developing strategies with the municipal sort of commissioner's office in terms of reducing food waste specifically, and a few things that are coming up. The cities are very keen to sort of look at, how the strategies can be developed. One of the aspects that came from the city itself was, can you help us to develop an open access GHG emission calculator that can really help, in identifying where, what are the level of interventions, and then who are the stakeholders that you need to work with. So goes back to that sort of question about measurement and, data-based approaches to really inform, what strategies a city government, for instance, could take. A lot of focus also has been in these two cities in terms of how consumer awareness campaigns, working with diverse sort of resident welfare associations or hotels, Horeca segment, etc. In Madhya Pradesh, we've also sort of taken, because we have Indore is quite well known in the Swachhata Sarvekshan, and they've been, on the top of the ladder in terms of overall cleanliness campaign, but food waste necessarily wasn't part of it, and now the city is kind of keen on. So we partnered with EPCO, Environment Planning Department in Government of Madhya Pradesh, to can we sort of think about who are the different cities, and we work with, currently sort of, what a collaborative action for different city governments could look like, right? So a lot of city level dialogues with different city governments to identify sort of issues and what could be done. And essentially overall then to think about strategies to reduce, through pilots, how we inform back into the sort of policies of the state government or the city governments on action. So yeah, essentially collaborative action requires thinking through building an enabling ecosystem, more data-based approaches. I see my time is up. I'm going to pass it back to you, Anar, and I'll talk more in the next. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ruchika. And thanks for talking about the Target Measure Act approach and how, we've seen it in action, and especially at different levels, be it city government or even when we're talking about the T20 policy. And let me move on to, I have follow-up question there, but let me move on to Meeta here and maybe, responding to the thread that you picked up on. And if Meeta, you could share that, how do you see, like, over the next few years, FAO will prioritize in terms of, actions or priority areas to accelerate food loss and waste reduction. And when we're talking about, how would these, look like in terms of country operations? So what would, and especially how does this look for India?
Thank you. And thank you for this very rich discussion points that are coming up. So first of all, food loss and waste for FAO is a very important priority area. And there are lots of actions and activities around it. Just the fact that 30% of the food produced globally is either lost or wasted is not acceptable as a society when we have so many people going hungry, when there is such a huge economic impact, and not to forget the environment impact, of course, of the resources that go into producing food. But even, as the experts in this team, we know that food waste produces methane, which is a much more potent gas than carbon dioxide for the climate impact. So food loss and waste is actually a very good entry point for sustainable food systems transformation. So with that thinking, FAO has a policy of reducing food loss and waste here at the regional office, and it is critically based on the principle of reduce, reuse, and recycle. So at the first point, we try to reduce to the extent possible the food that is either lost or wasted, and then to be able to redistribute it either through food banks for human consumption or as animal feed, and then only what cannot be reduced or redistributed should go into recycling. So that is a very important point. We cannot just see what is wasted and take it for recycling if it is fit for human consumption or fit to go back into the food chain in any way or manner. And so the most of the work that we are doing is kind of to develop a momentum around the work on food loss and waste at the global level and also at the country level. So some of our key priority areas for work are supporting countries to develop their national strategies for food loss and waste. And even if we look in the Asia Pacific region, there are many countries which don't have a food loss and waste strategy as of now, with no goals or targets. So, without a commitment of policy, it's very difficult to get buy-in from the stakeholders to take this action. So, FAO, the normative work, we have a voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste, which is being used by countries to develop a white paper, which is then being used to develop national strategies. We have supported several countries globally to develop their national strategies on food loss and waste. Right now in the region, we are supporting the country of Vietnam for developing their national strategies. Another very key area of action, since this is a relatively new area of work, is to document best practices and to show what the impact of this best practices is. So, for example, we spoke about landfills, we spoke about measuring the emissions. We are documenting a best practice which the city of Surat, they have a wholesale market where they are stopping tons of waste from the wholesale market from going to the landfills and actually converting it to bio-CNG. So we have the environment impact of it, how much CNG is produced. So we are contributing to green energy. We are having an economic impact, also the potential to link it to carbon credits. FAO is supporting countries in measuring food loss and waste. And it's a great pride for India that currently India is probably the only country in the region that is contributing to the National Food Loss Index that FAO is the custodian for. So, so yes, our support to measuring food loss and waste, and then of course capacity building, supporting innovative projects around food loss and waste is everything that can be taken up at the country level. We are planning now to take up, in the coming biennium, to take up specific activities focused on food loss and waste. And what can emerge from this discussion can actually be taken up there. I know my time is a bit limited right now, but I would just focus on two things before I hand over back to you, Anar. First is that also, we are working on linking the findings from food loss and waste to the broader global initiatives like the methane reduction campaign, and working with countries to see how food loss and waste can contribute to the nationally determined contribution 3.0. And last but not the least, we feel that for food loss and waste, it is very, very important a change in mindset, which is from treating waste as useless to giving to changing the impression that everything that we call waste can actually be used as a resource. It can be upcycled, recycled as a resource. It has an economic value. And with that change in mindset, I think is what will help to bring about the change that we are looking for. So back to you, Anar.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Meeta, for sharing those insights. And it's interesting to note that how you're helping Vietnam develop the national strategy for food loss and waste to sort of working with India to contribute to the food loss and waste index. And agree with you on sort of also linking food loss and waste reduction through multiple wins, be it methane reduction to generating energy, or looking at waste as a viewing it as a resource rather than waste. So that's a mindset we should all be looking at all levels, not just consumers but also businesses or farmers who are generating food loss and waste as well. So let me go to Andrew, and especially Andrew, I'd like to follow up on your point on how you saw private sector in action in your last few weeks, and would like to invite you to share and on what kind of food loss and waste projects are you planning to support next, and which finance tools you think World Bank will use to support these private players to come in and reduce food loss and waste.
Okay, thank you. So, firstly, a couple of things I'll touch on in terms of what the World Bank is doing. Of course, the World Bank, we provide loans to government. We also have a private sector arm. So there's a whole finance side, but we also provide analytics and knowledge and convening. So I'll touch on both of those. I mean, firstly, just to be clear, we don't do food loss and waste projects. I mean, we're quite clear on who our target group is, whether it be smallholder farmers, and of course, we want to increase incomes and improve livelihoods of smallholder farmers. We're interested in consumers, providing safe, nutritious food for consumers. We're interested in supporting entrepreneurship, and we're interested in creating jobs including jobs for women and youth. So, but when you think about it, I mean, the sorts of interventions we have, which are touching those target groups, have a sort of a secondary outcome in a way, which is around food loss and waste. So we support a lot of cluster projects in India. We have new programs on the ground in Kerala and in Uttar Pradesh. We've had a good success in projects in Himachal, in Assam, in Maharashtra, where the core concept is to see how we can increase the efficiency and performance of agro-food systems, and seeing where public money needs to play a role within those systems, whether it's getting appropriate technologies to smallholder farmers so they're able to produce a product of the quality required by the market, so you don't produce substandard produce which may be wasted. Secondly, you may be helping farmers to aggregate through support to farm producer organizations, thereby creating economies of scale, reducing waste. Thirdly, to improve market linkages between farmers and off-takers. Fourthly, helping entrepreneurs and private sector make investments and FPOs in storage or food processing, reducing wastage. Working agro-logistics, again, to look through the whole value chain to see where the pain points are. So primarily to increase efficiencies, income, and nutrition outcomes for consumers. But a lot of that has this sort of byproduct, in a way, of reducing food loss and waste, which, as I said at the start, are an outcome of inefficient markets. We also work quite heavily, and we have upcoming projects in Tamil Nadu and in Bihar on women's entrepreneurship, especially working with national and state level rural livelihood missions. We see in India a lot of food processing taking place at the MSME level, including self-help groups. So improving the capacity of those groups to be viable enterprises, having the right technology, access to finance, branding, skilling, so they're able to be effective players in food processing. So that's sort of on the investment side. On the sort of convening and policy side, so we hold the secretariat of a South Asia regional platform called SAPLING. SAPLING stands for South Asia Policy Leadership for Improved Nutrition and Growth. This has quite a heavy emphasis on food loss and waste and agro-food transformation. So it's the World Bank convening South Asian countries to come together to discuss, share information on potential solutions, including for food loss and waste, and see how we can bring both public sector and private sector together to solve for those issues. And then on the policy level, we try to work with those national and state level entities which have a big stake in this. And for instance, we organized an event last week with the Ministry of Food Processing Industry. Clearly, food processing is one of the answers to food loss and waste with a private sector angle. The Ministry of Food Processing Industry has multiple schemes aimed at different segments in the market. So one of the discussions we're having with them is how do we make these schemes more effective in producing support, and how can we be clearer in terms of articulation of what the policy goals are for an organization such as the Ministry of Food Processing Industry, and including on reducing food loss and waste through the system. So there's a range of things which we do. We're not all about finance, it's about other aspects as well. But there is a need for financial innovation and ways of stimulating investments in this sector, whether it be through investment funds, challenge funds, enabling farmers to access financing, providing matching grants where you see a clear public sector interest. There are a number of instruments out there which we tend to employ in our programs. Let me stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Andrew, for highlighting those aspects, and agree with you. And even if we are looking at food loss and waste as a key outcome indicator in all of these interventions to improve efficiency in agricultural food systems, or while we are looking at supporting enterprises working in food processing, if we look at food loss and waste reduction as a key outcome indicator, that could also be a step forward in sort of reducing food loss and waste. And let me move on to Amol here, and picking up on what you spoke about, especially FPOs and farmer groups. Amol, from Magnet's experience of working closely with FPOs and smallholder farmers, what approaches have you seen that are promising when it comes to reducing post-harvest loss? And how can these be scaled across different value chains, especially given Magnet's experience?
Yeah, as all panel members have rightly highlighted, the most important thing about the food losses, or the approaches that we can adopt based on our learning, is that we should have tailor-made approaches for the individual small farmers or the farmers groups or so on, because most of them are they don't have, as already I have mentioned, that they don't have any enough access to finance and enough technical know-how. So what we have learned is that we have adopted approaches, like we have tailor-made the based on the requirements. Even we are planning to scale up our project in according to, for the small FPOs, we try to emphasize on creating a small infrastructure, and based on the needs for the private players, who can provide the backward linkages to lot many small farmers. For them, we can provide the big infrastructure kind of thing. uh, big infrastructure kind of thing. And also uh, the other few things like what Andrew has mentioned is the market linkages. So we felt need that due to the lack of market linkages, people are not interested much in investing in the infrastructure that will reduce the food losses. So for that, what we have strategy that we have adopted is to have kind of permanent structure within our institution for the market linkages, as well as what they lack is the quality, the prospective design. So we also wanted to have the kind of the permanent structure that will provide, guide them, handhold them, even for the design preparation, the project plan preparation. And the important aspect about the food loss prevention is the providing the small farmers the innovative technologies like solar cold storages, the few of the small dryers and so on, that can be provided to them at a smaller scale as a standalone technologies that can they can invest in, and we can provide the matching grant, but they can invest from their own sum, and that will help them to manage their the produce at their own farm gates or their nearby region. That will also increase their incomes and reduce the food losses. Another thing that we notice, because our project primarily focuses on the primary and secondary processing, but the food losses can be reduced because the lot of the what we can say this the lower grade of the perishable, they can be used utilized in the processing or processed products. So but initially we were not even promoting the tertiary processing kind of thing, or we were limiting that. So it is kind of we have discussed among ourselves with the ADB and our higher decision makers that the tertiary processing can also be promoted in our next phase of project. So that are our learnings. And also the for food loss reduction, what we can say, the capacity building of the farmers, or what we can say the outreach, or the providing them the enough technical knowledge, generating awareness is as crucial as having infrastructure. So for focusing on the food safety standards, the standards for various other certification, the plant processing standard, then most importantly those the infrastructure is being created, but there are no skilled manpower to effectively handle it, so effectively manage it. So we are also focusing on extending the trainings to those skilled manpower who can work effectively in the infrastructure that is being created or that will be created in the future. As well as we are having dedicated capacity building workshop that can tailor made to the needs of the our small farmers or the members of FPOs or the backwardly linked farmers of the existing private players. So that is all based on our present learning. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amol, for weighing in on that, and especially highlighting how infrastructure should be suited to the size of farm operations or farmer groups that we are talking about, and how hand holding in terms of developing a project plan and thinking about viability and co-designing this with farmer groups would also be approach that has worked in the case of Magnet. And especially how using lower grade products in processing, and how do we, even when we are talking about processing, how do we look at the different primary, secondary and tertiary level interventions as we think of supporting FPOs here. Let me now reach out to Ruchika and sort of invite her to reflect on based on WRI India's research and other projects, and given our discussion so far and based on our work so far, what evidence gap exists, and that could inform policy interventions to effectively reduce food loss and waste, especially across diverse sectors? Because when we're talking about food loss and waste, there are diverse actors and sectors. So Ruchika, please, if you could come in here.
Thanks, Anand. So I'll answer it in two ways, right? I mean, there is evidence gap itself when we think about strategies to reduce food loss and waste, but even the policy landscape for food loss and waste is very fragmented in India. What do I mean by that? I mean, if we think about it, there is no one nodal sort of ministry, for instance, that's looking at the topic. It's fragmented across Ministry of Farmers Welfare and Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Ministry of Food Processing Industries, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, as an example, right? And I'm not even getting into finance, etc. Similarly, at the state level, also this is fragmented. So essentially, one question when we are talking about how do we sort of, what are the strategies to inform policy interventions, we're also we need to think through in terms of it, essentially one would be informing these different ministries. And, so thinking about it in that context becomes very critical as a first important point. From our own policy analysis that we did in the known and unknown paper, there were few sort of things that came out, right? I mean, overall, if we look at it, there's very limited policy analysis in the systematic literature review of all the papers that we reviewed. We found that that's not, there are not many research studies that are actually looking at this topic in a holistic way. So a lot more that needs to be done. Just from that perspective, India is very great with doing national level assessments on post-harvest loss. As we know, ICRCFIT and then NAPCONs, did the last one. So the data on measurement is there, but what happens once if there are different policy interventions that are taken, what's the impact of that is a bit unclear. And I'll give you few examples just to kind of talk about what do I mean by that. Agriculture, for instance, is a state subject, but the union government would play a role in informing policy guidelines, allocating funds, etc. And when we think about post-harvest infrastructure, particularly for cold storage and supply chain that's being sort of created, a lot of it, once it's done, unclear on, what has it been successful in reducing losses. So the evidence gap here becomes, while cold chain is or cold storages, for instance, might be installed, are they for the right crop commodity? Is it at the right, in the right region? How are we thinking about it? At least from our earlier analysis of known unknown paper, a lot of it was skewed, in few states, essentially for certain crop commodities, right? And this is something that we need. We need more evidence to actually identify policies that are already being implemented. What's the impact? What do we need to do different essentially? Another sort of example from a post-harvest infrastructure, if I, keep talking on the same topic, is this is again under multiple departments and agencies, right? Agri-logistics and post-harvest management. It's not really coming under one ministry or government department at the state level. So, because the data is also fragmented, if we want to understand what the progress against a particular policy scheme is, it sort of then leads to very fragmented implementation as well. But so those are sort of some of the gaps. Additionally, and if we want to sort of build the sort of ecosystem around some of this for the food loss specifically, how do we sort of think about the food supply chain essentially? So it's about storage, but it's also about post, not just storage at farm gate or near farm gate, but what happens across the food supply chain or going all the way to consumption. So that's the evidence gap that needs a bit more sort of thinking through. I know colleagues here earlier talked about a food systems approach. Absolutely agree. Very, very critical to do. So really thinking from farm to plate, what really happens? How do we think about the integrated supply chain? And if there are particular solutions that are being sort of implemented, how are they resulting in sort of, reducing nutritional loss, for instance, or minimizing losses? So a bit more evidence. We need sort of, more measurement of some of the already implemented programs to see how some of that happens. We've seen the same in case of food waste as well. Essentially, and the topic of food waste, at least the evidence, if we look at, there's much lesser research that's been done on the topic in India, at least. So how, just kind of thinking through in terms of the drivers, what are the costs and benefits for managing and reducing food waste. And also then, how do we, the recommendations would have to flow for different policy interventions based on that. So these are sort of, at a high level, if we're thinking about evidence gaps, there are multiple. And I think here, sort of a key takeaway is really thinking about it from a food systems approach, so that we also think about solutioning and informing policy interventions based on that becomes critical. And the last point that I'd like to make is, and here there's a lot that we can do if we start thinking from a food systems perspective. There's a lot more that we can also do through convergence of public funding, for instance, post-harvest infrastructure. And I think Andrew touched on that point. While a certain sort of department or ministry may be responsible for this, rural livelihood mission can actually support with on ground innovation, for instance, that can be done to create sort of reducing food losses, whether it's solar dryers or whatever different kind of interventions that might be needed. Similarly, on the financing side, and this is something that we've also seen, especially for startups, small and medium enterprises, from our learning of running the land accelerator in India, and we had a lot of while the focus of the land accelerator was on restoration, we actually used to get a lot of businesses who would apply, who were working on the food loss and waste innovation side. And how do they get the right kind of financing, patient capital, which can sort of help in reducing, for them to tune their business models to scale up their innovations, etc., is a gap, which would mean we need more evidence essentially on these innovative business models. What are the sort of capacity gaps? What are the sort of challenges they are facing? And then feeding back that into the policy in terms of having them have access to some of the government sort of programs, what NABARD is, for instance, doing, and those sort of become critical. Yeah, I mean, I'll pause here, and I know we are almost out of time, so back to you, Anar.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ruchika, and thanks for highlighting especially the evidence gap and how fragmented the data is. And I especially found your point very interesting on fragmented data may lead to fragmented implementation as well, especially if you're not integrating feedback loops and evidence generated, or like the insights from multiple ministries and sectors and departments and actors that work together on this. And while we'd like to take on more questions, there's one question that I would like to invite all the speakers to reflect on. I know, Meeta, already you responded to it. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for that question here. So the question is, how do we engage community members, especially women, on managing food waste? Because waste generating from local markets, especially vegetables, they don't know how to manage the disposal. So how do we support women more, and how do we support them in that waste to wealth conversion? So how do we build their capacity? If someone would want to reflect on that, Andrew, especially since you had also mentioned your work working with supporting women, and inviting everyone to share their insights as well as concluding.
Sure. So let me just come into it. Of course, the self-help group movement is one obvious way into this, but then that's fine. That's the institutional platform. How do you use that platform for increased awareness of issues? And actually, I think NRM has been pretty successful in that. I mean, you saw it in COVID, how they were used the SHGs for communications around vaccination, for instance. So that could be a useful a conduit for that. But of course, I mean, ideally, you want to get technologies which, for these simple technologies which can preserve food for a bit longer, or see how you can actually use food waste for other purposes. This is about encouraging technology into local areas. Of course, there's approaches to that as well, including I've seen sort of innovation centers at the local level, where there's a possibility to bring together local actors with entrepreneurs. And of course, it has to be backed by finance. I mean, how do you create financial products which women are able to access to be able to scale up businesses in this sector? Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. I'd also invite Amol. Amol, you already had your hand up, and especially, I have a follow-up question on that, on how do you engage communities, especially work with FPOs, to see advantages of converting food waste to energy? Or do you see some linkages, especially when we are looking at agri-waste and processing and, byproducts? So we have a question on that, if you find some insights to share here.
Sorry, so question was on regarding the participation of women, or I got disconnected for a few seconds.
Sure. Let me summarize it for you, and I hope I've got the question right. So how do we empower women,
Yes.
enable women, and especially, and if another part of the question was, how do we look at agri waste and energy conversion, if you see that as an opportunity?
Okay. So first thing is about the engagement or the enhancing the participation of women. As this is the project, as a part of project, we do emphasize on women's participation, and our more than 20% of our total project beneficiaries or the beneficiary partners, farmers, are the women only. So regarding the engagement of one of the policy that we followed is we engaged with the community managed resource centers known as CMRCs in Maharashtra. They are promoted by the what you can say, the Women Finance Development Corporation, what we call MAVIM in Maharashtra. So it is a government-led body that they created, like the Kudumbashri. They have the groups of around 3,000 women per taluka or per tahsil in the Maharashtra. So that resource centers are created. They have wide-based membership among the women. We, and they are being promoted by even the international the IFAD also. So along with that, we have promoted few of the projects with them. We are also promoting to have those women members of the CMRCs to have solar dryers or the best food waste reducing practices adopt. Along with that, as Andrew has mentioned, the state livelihood mission also, they have their own SSG network. They are also part of our project. And another thing that we highlighted is because the woman led FPOs, they run low on their equity part, they run low on their other turnover part. So we have made to make them eligible to seek our take our benefits. What we have done is that with in consultation with VDV, we have reduced, or we have relaxed their basic eligibility criteria so that they can easily avail the benefits under our project. And we are also promoting handholding for the or the widely available in mass technologies like solar dryers and so on, for this specifically suited to these women led farmers or FPOs. Regarding your second question, how to convert waste into bioenergy, in our present scheme of things, that is not a part, but what we are looking at, there is a huge generation of food waste or the waste from the vegetable losses and so on in the market yards or the market fields. So what we are looking, or our leadership is looking at, is our the larger mandis or markets in Maharashtra. We can have the waste to wealth or the bio waste management, some kind of plants in our scaled up scheme of things. So if that is there, then I think that issue can to a little extent can be addressed. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amol, for weighing in on that. And thank you, Andrew. We do have, questions in the chat, but especially in the interest of time, we'd not be able to take them all. But I invite speakers to respond to them on the chat as and when they have the time. I had a very, very enriching discussion, and I learned a lot from all of you. Thank you so much for participating in this, and I would now invite Shweta to close the session and have a photograph. Over to you, Shweta.
Thanks, Anar. I would like to thank all the panelists, all the speakers for a very, very engaging session today. This is a wrap to our Food Forward Series 2025, but certainly not a wrap to all our work on the issue of food loss and food waste reduction. In fact, listening to all the speakers, all the experts, there are more ideas coming in, especially on the solutions bit, which is exciting. And we look forward to see how more collaborations can be done, how we can work together, how we can think together in the next year as well. So just closing with this thought and request that please feel free to reach out to our team, write to us with whatever ideas you might have for us to take up, or any suggestions or for any collaborations if you're interested. So just that, and thank you once again. Thank you all the participants for joining us today. Have a very good evening. And shall we just pause for a photograph before we close?
Yes, and requesting the team also to turn on their camera, please. Meenakshi, Mimansha, everyone.
Hi, I'm in the process of clicking the picture. 1 second, please. I just need to change my view. Thank you. I'm just taking one more as a backup. Please bear with me. Thank you.
I have taken few
Thank
pictures.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.